Arnold sent me this article, and it was on a blog, and it was talking about feminism as this dangerous pseudo religion. And I wanted to talk about it because I believe feminism on some aspects or in certain aspects is a religion. Why? Because it is no longer about equality, just saying, hey, we just want to be recognized as equal image bearers with men. No. Now it is about power. It is about this resentment, the systematic dismantling of these power structures, and all of that. It pushes against biblical truth in terms of what God has revealed in his written word. And so I wanted to spend a few moments just talking about feminism and its destruction of the family and this religion. I'm calling it a religion in the sense that there's this systematized dogma that accompanies this worldview. And it starts with its own Genesis story, right? And so, all religions, they all have an origin story. Like in the God of the Bible and Christianity, we have an origin story that it starts with Genesis in the scriptures. And so because we have that, you'll find other world religions, they might have an a different view, but they all have their own origin story. And so when it comes to feminism, I have here that it teaches that in the beginning there was like this matriarchal utopia. Now, I don't know ever in humanity where a matriarchal utopia ever existed. However, according to feminism, they paint this picture as if there was this egalitarian, nurturing society where the women were in charge, and it was just amazing until something happened. They claim where women were in charge and they were ruling with wisdom and fairness, as if. But then the fall of man came, right? They literally imply that when the patriarchy was invented by men, it was invented to oppress women, to strip them of power, and then to force them into domestic slavery. This is why you see so many women struggle and won't make their man a sandwich, because they're like, well, serving you is like being a slave, and I don't want to do that. Like, have you not heard that, where it's like something as simple as like, hey man, can you make me a sandwich? Make your own sandwich. You're like right there. Like the turkey and the cheese is right there. And this is oppressive for you to make this sandwich? Okay, fine. And so just like we had a fall in the Garden of Eden, in this pseudo religion of feminism, they view the patriarchy and men being the head and over women or just in charge of the family. They view that as some type of fall of man, and they consider it some sort of paradise lost. And so what I wanted to do was kind of contrast that, not as if you guys don't know this. But the problem with that is that the Bible kind of outlines our actual Genesis story and the fall of man. And it started in the garden with rebellion, right? It was direct opposition to, have God not said? Did God really say? We see in Genesis 1:27 where sin did not enter the world through male oppression, right? We have to at least correct that erroneous view. Sin entered the world because of rebellion. The God gave Adam and Eve a command. The serpent beguiled and deceived Eve. She ate of the fruit, then gave to her husband, and then he ate it, and then everything just got all messed up. And so when we have sin entering the world, and not through this male oppression, what we notice that it represents this rebellion just against God's authority, because God had already laid down the law of what needed to be, and if you do this, you shall surely die. That's the rebellion that comes in. And so that leads me to a discussion on, is there a feminism gospel? Right? Is there a gospel of feminism that has gripped the culture, that has caused women to believe these lies? And I would argue that it is. One, when you saw the advent or the liberation of women, that right there was the precipice of this feminism gospel, right? So here's what, in the feminist gospel paradigm, here's what they promise. Feminism offers salvation, but not from sin. Mm-mm. It is salvation from male authority and traditional gender roles. Now, we already know if God has spoken and laid down an order for his church and an order from the family, this is a perversion. In this gospel of feminism, everything is perverted. It's no longer sin is your problem. You've offended a righteous and a holy God, and you need to be made alive in Christ Jesus. No, you need salvation because men are the problem. They're oppressive, right? They're oppressing you. The patriarchy is the problem, and we got to tear it down. And so, therefore, this gospel of feminism, it offers or preaches, I should say, that true freedom is not freedom from God's wrath and the curse of sin and death. No, it is freedom. Your freedom comes from rejecting your biblical femininity, rejecting motherhood, and rejecting submission in marriage. And instead, you must embrace radical independence. I do what I want to do. Can't nobody tell me nothing. I'm an independent woman and I'm strong and I'm a boss chick and I'm a boss babe. You all of the things. You know what I'm talking about. It also includes that radical independence comes the sexual liberation and then the career ambition. And when you put it all together, all of those things, you want those things above all else. The last thing you want to be is tethered or tied to some man. Because in the gospel of feminism, your salvation, your freedom, your liberation comes from rejecting God's biblical design and order and to embrace this instead. And so what I want to do, we got to have a reality check, right? Why? Because this alleged deception, if you will, of salvation, where has that led us? Right? What have we gotten in exchange for embracing the gospel of feminism? Well, according to studies, you have liberal feminist women. Here's what they report. These are the results. Since we talk about results all the time, and that's how you can measure the success of something, they report higher rates of loneliness, depression, and dissatisfaction compared to conservative women who embrace marriage and family. The promise of freedom has left many women broken, disillusioned, and angry. So you have a whole generation of women who believed the lie, right? They were converted via the proclamation of the gospel of feminism. They yielded themselves wholeheartedly to it. And what do we end up seeing? Disillusioned women who are angry and broken and lonely. Don't forget that part. They were promised freedom. They were promised that no one is holding you down because marriage is oppressive and children are slavery. And if you want children, you can do so by freezing your eggs and just get his sperm, but you don't need his headship and his covering and his leadership. You don't need that. Just get the seed, right? Well, who are some of the key players? Just like in scripture, where we have our the apostles and our prophets, and then in the old covenant we had the Levitical priesthood. In this religion of feminism, they have their high priest too. And so there are some key figures that I want to identify, and I want to identify these individuals by name and their teachings. And you have here Mary Daly. She's considered a radical feminist theologian. And this woman argued for a world without men. I'm like, you got to be out your mind. That's a you. Listen, I can't imagine my world without men. That's just not a world I want to live in. They've civilized the world. Like, I need men, right? I need someone to build the roads and the bridges and trash and all. It's just all kinds of things. Not that they just exist to serve me, but men play such an important role in the world. The idea that someone can argue for a world without men tells me they are absolutely lost. You bat crazy if you can advocate for something like that. But this woman did, Mary Daly. She argued for a world without men, and she saw masculinity as a force of evil. Like, I don't even know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that. Then we had Andrea Dworkin. This right now I'm going through like the priests and the prophets of this religion of feminism. Andrea claimed that all heterosexual relationships were oppressive. These are some really broken women. Really broken women. All heterosexual relationships are oppressive. Then we had Carol Gilligan. Carol pushed the idea that women's morality was superior to men's. So now what she's doing is she's perverting what the scriptures teach about all of us being fallen sons and daughters of Adam with a sin nature. And now she's pitting the man against the woman and saying that the sinful nature of a man is somehow a man's sin nature is superior, and the woman's morality is superior, and his fallenness and his sinful and wickedness is somehow worse. Now, obviously, all of these things can be argued in scripture. Like, we can go to multiple texts to disprove this. But right now, I'm just going through some of the dogma and the teachings that these individuals espoused. Then you had Monique Whitting, and she declared that true liberation required rejecting heterosexuality altogether. I'll repeat that again. Monique Whitting declared that true liberation required rejecting heterosexuality altogether. Remember how I told you that the results of this religion yields loneliness, depression, and dissatisfaction? Are we shocked? Are we shocked that this is the result? In addition to them having their priests and prophets, they have sacred texts. These feminists, they serve as the high priest of the movement. So those are about 4 individuals, but within the African American community, we have tons of individuals who push this harmful rhetoric. And unfortunately, our sacred texts, I would throw in Essence magazine. I probably wouldn't have thrown Ebony, probably in its early stages, no, because it highlighted, Ebony and Jet celebrated just Black culture. But definitely Essence magazine, I would say, I would throw in there is one of the feminist sacred texts that push this feminist religion. These texts, or should I say propaganda that push this feminism, typically they go unchallenged in academia and the mainstream media. And the thing is, if you disagree with this, they will label you a heretic. So just like in a religion where we have heterodoxy and orthodoxy, people who teach teachings that are in line with mainstream Christianity, and then those who teach something on the outskirts that has been deemed heresy through church history, if you go against the mainstream ideology of feminists and feminism, they will label you as a heretic. And so here's the utopian goal of this religion of feminism. Feminism promises a world where hierarchy is eliminated, gender roles are abolished, and women are freed from the constraints of marriage. Think about how many people you know who destroyed their homes, and broke up their marriages because they thought it was going to be freedom out there. For example, I would argue that an individual who bought into this lie that has major regrets is Tia Mowry. Tia Mowry, for whatever reason, allowed the culture, right, the friend girls to get in her ear and convince her that she didn't need Corey. Girl, you making more money than him. He's just dead weight. You tired of pulling the weight. Forget all of the value that he added to that family and how he loved his wife and loved his children. She believed the lie. And it wasn't less than a year of her being out in them streets before she realized that she was not about that life. And that life at home with her husband was so much more better and peaceful and safe and stable than the instability out in these streets with these Negroes that don't care about you. She had to learn that the hard way. But the thing about it is the utopian goal is that they promise you that these kids and the marriage and the mundaneness of home, that's bad. It's oppressive. You feel stifled. You feel restrained or constricted. But when you live in your authentic self, break up your home, get rid of the dead weights, graduate from your marriage, they promise that's their heaven, that's the freedom, but it's a trap. It's a lie. Here's the reality of equality. Despite claims that feminism seeks equality, it actually often promotes female superiority, right? It claims that they just want to be equal, just like Eve, who wanted to rule over Adam, right? It's the same thing, but they do it under, no, we just want to be equal. No, you really want to dominate and control the man. I have here that we constantly hear women say that they need more women in leadership, and that if we do that, it'll lead to a more kinder, more just world. But when do we ever see that? Let's just look at these major cities where we either have a female DA, a female mayor, a female police chief. Look at the chaos. These women they are in control of nothing. Everything is out of control, just like their lives are. Their lives are out of control and out of order. Are we shocked that the areas where they allegedly have control and leadership is out of order too? I'm not saying that women can't lead. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we have plenty enough examples to demonstrate that it's an overemphasis and it's an imbalance in this female leadership, and it's leading to matriarchal squalor. It is. That's just a fact. So that's the utopian goal. Feminist damnation. If you reject feminism, right, they will cast you into feminist hell. And what they'll do is they'll brand you as a misogynist, meaning you hate women. So if you are not on board with the feminist agenda, you hate women, and they'll call you a misogynist or pick me. I've been called a pick me plenty of times, and I wear it as a badge of honor. Or they'll say you are an internalized misogynist, right? So like if you're a man, you must atone for the sins of your manliness by renouncing your masculinity. See, they want to label your masculinity as toxic, right? So if you basically don't let her have her way and do what she want to do, you're a toxic man. That's where we are. So let's talk a little bit about the intolerance and cancel culture. Like every cult, right now we're talking about this religion of feminism, where it leads, what some of its tenets are, how you can identify whether you're being a good feminist and adhering to the rules, or if you're at risk of being rejected and labeled a heretic. Like every cult, feminism demands loyalty. So like, for example, let's say you're a married woman and you got a bunch of feministic, liberal, progressive, Marxist-minded single chicks as friends. Eventually, one or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to convert you and you're going to be like them, or you're going to convert them. And that rarely happens. It's kind of like birds of a feather flock together. You can continue to try to keep the matriarchal miscreants in your circle if you want to. But what's going to end up happening is somebody's going to corrupt somebody. They demand absolute loyalty. And so these feminist believers, right, they don't just encourage, but they're required to purge the dissenters. So if you're in the group, like, for example, let's just use Tia Mowry as an example. If she's got a lot of single, feminist, independent-minded girlfriends, and she was like the only single woman, there's a reason why Tia and Tamara, as twin sisters, are not as close as they used to be. Tamara's married, got a stable home, and a marriage with some kids. And right now, Tia's whole little situationship with her life is toxic. And so as she's like, this is my twin, and I love her, but I have to break away from you, because what's going to end up happening is you're not in the mind frame to listen to any sort of wise counsel from me. So I can't have you corrupting me. So I'm going to have to break away from you. But what happens is, in the feminist paradigm, they will purge the dissenters. So and this is how it looks, whether it's canceling those who question the gender wage gap, or destroying and tearing down men who won't bow the knee to the radical feminism. That's typically what it looks like. They have to get rid of the dissenters. And so here are some of those. We've seen real life consequences happen as a result of women adopting and being baptized, I'll say, into the religion of feminism. We've got like real life consequences. So we've seen careers ruined, lives destroyed, and even women shunned simply for rejecting feminist ideology. Think about how many of your friends walked away from you when you decided that, you know what, I think I want to be married, or I think I might want to be a mom. And they're like, wait a minute, that's not the plan. We supposed to be hot girl summer, ride or die forever. And it's like, well, I love y'all, but I don't want to ride or die with y'all. Like, I want to ride or die like with a family, right? They will purge you from the group. They will purge you. And yet, feminism presents itself. This is the deception. It presents itself as the movement of freedom and choice until you choose that you actually want stability of a family and a bona fide marriage with a man who loves you and a man that you respect and some kids. You start advocating for that and see how quick they switch up on you. Just saying. But now that I've given you a little introduction into the religion of feminism, let's look at God's design for how women are to be. Unlike feminism, biblical Christianity doesn't view men as the enemy, right? Men are not the enemy. Women and men are not in this constant battle for power. There is this wonderful, homogenous, complementarian relationship that men and women are designed to function in when everybody plays their role, right? So if Christ is the head of his church, and man is the head of women, for us to think that we can pervert that and usurp that and think we're going to get favorable outcomes means that we are deceived. And so in biblical Christianity upholds the dignity and worth of women. We are incredibly valuable. We are equal with men, but we are different in function, and there is nothing wrong with that. Like I said, the complementary roles that men and women play when they're in covenant relationship with one another, it is a reflection of Christ and his church. And it is a beautiful synergy that when everyone is playing their role, God is glorified and he's honored in that. And so true fulfillment comes when women embrace their God-given roles and reject the religion of feminism, because true femininity, I know that this religion promises fulfillment, but I've already explained to you what the outcomes tend to be. And it's the bondage that results from adopting this worldview. If you catch it early and repent and run and shun that, I believe that God is so merciful. He's been merciful to so many of us who actually at one point adopted this worldview and thought that this was the way to go. But I will tell you that the bitterness, the resentment, all of the things that are the opposite of biblical femininity can be enjoyed and experienced, but you have to at least acknowledge and recognize that you haven't been doing it God's way, and you need to submit to his lordship. Because here's the deal. A woman who won't submit to the lordship of Jesus, she's not going to submit to a man. She's going to constantly always push and fight against whatever that man got going on and what he says and what he wants. And it's because she's not submitted to the lordship of Jesus first. This is the distinguishing factor between biblical Christianity and someone who claims to be a Christian but has adopted a feminist mindset. Femininity and the future is female. If that's what's on her mind, she might be a pseudo Christian but totally sold out to the religion of feminism. Because biblical femininity, you're gonna get joy and peace. You get protection and provision. There's so many spiritual blessings that are a result, and then just blessings in the fullness of time, like in real life that you get to experience when you adopt God's way of structuring your life. And so here's my final takeaway. At the end of the day, I am arguing that feminism absolutely does operate like a religion. But the difference between the religion of feminism and Christianity is there's no grace, there's no mercy, there is no redemption of sin, and there's no great exchange of the burden that you feel for some other righteousness that's not your own. You don't get that in feminism. The so-called path to salvation in this religious paradigm, it leads to death and destruction. We see the brokenness that it yields in families. We see the brokenness that it yields in societies. We see the death that it yields when women completely devote themselves to this religion and they adopt the lies of womb assassination and abortion. There's so many detrimental outcomes and effects of being devoted to the religion of feminism that at some level, eventually, loyal adherents who end up dying adherents, they know that they believe the lie. But like Romans 1 says, they suppress the truth in their unrighteousness, and they just double down on it. And so when we fail to embrace God's design, these are just some of the implications that happen as a result. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. If you've seen feminism operate as like this pseudo religion, and if you've seen it in your life and how you had to denounce it and just completely reject it, I'd love to hear you share some of your thoughts of wisdom with the live chat in the comments below. Other than that, I just wanted to give a quick little overview of it. And I'm grateful for Brother Arnold for sending me that article. I thought it was so interesting in the insights that it shared. I had never looked at feminism as a religion, but I can actually see the tenets and the dogma and its path of salvation. It has like a whole little soteriological paradigm that absolutely mirrors the lie and the deception that Eve adhered to in the garden.